Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Surprise Jab Podcast. I'm your host, Zachary Ruger, surprising you with new topics every single weekend, jabbing you with your daily dose of UFC. And ladies and gentlemen, it is Thursday, February 1st. Well, it's crazy. January has already come to an end. Went by pretty fast. Year's off to a decent, good start for me personally. Grinding out school, working on where to live next year. I do have to work out an internship or job for the summer. That will be something that needs to be accomplished. So yeah, but that can be saved for another time, because on today's episode we got a lot of fun stuff to do. The big ending of the episode, if you will, the main theme is UFC Vegas 85, our preview, our predictions for that card going down this Saturday at the UFC Apex. Of course, the 85th event in the Apex, headlined by top 15 middleweights Roman Dolidze and Nasruddin Imavov. And I've been seeing a lot of MMA pages, especially MMA Theory on Instagram, who have been saying that this is the type of Apex cards we need to have. Not big names, but young up-and-comers. Not Tai Tuivasa versus Marcin Tybura, but Roman Dolidze versus Nasruddin Imavov. To as much as they're not up and comers, I mean, Roman Dolidze is in his 30s, but he is not really in the title picture right now. Nasruddin's 27, still rising the ranks. So sort of guys like that, where they're actually kind of newer and they're fighting to move up into the top 10 and potentially the top 5. So I really like that idea. So, but anyways, we'll be talking about UFC Vegas 85. We're also going to be talking about the 48 Laws of Power. I have 4 more laws to go over. I'm averaging about a chapter a day. I'm pretty sure I read 2 the other day, but I was very ambitious. I was telling myself I was going to read 3 chapters every day. That hasn't gone as planned. But hey, as long as I'm reading every day at least, that's a good thing. We're going to check out the NFL Pro Bowl, go over some new UFC news. There's a lot of chaos stuff today. Check in with the NBA and NHL, and we're actually going to look at the 2021 UFC year in review. It's always exciting. It's been a little series we've been doing. We've done 2019, 2020, and now we're on to 2021. And of course, other surprises along the way. So without a doubt, let's get right on into it with some new UFC news. I mean, who doesn't love new UFC news? Of course, that's the whole theme of the Surprise Jab Podcast. Kind of. It's maybe it's the theme, maybe it isn't the theme. Just talking is honestly the main theme. Anyways, so we'll talk about the big one that went down today, and that was Dustin Poirier putting out there on the social medias that his fight versus Benoit Saint Denis for UFC Vegas, or not UFC Vegas, UFC 299 in March was not going down. He wasn't fighting Benoit Saint Denis. The contract was never signed, and the May pages were breaking, saying that the fight was never signed in general. Dana White was going after journalists and stuff. All pages on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram, they were all throwing stuff out there. And then later in the day, I'm talking a couple hours later, he actually tweeted out, "My bad, guys. Some confusion with my manager. I will be fighting Benoit Saint Denis in the co-main event 5-round fight at UFC 299. Everyone was kind of like, oh my goodness, thank goodness this fight is actually going down. I have no idea what the whole issue was, but I'm just glad it was fixed, because I'm happy to see both these guys fighting. And I'm not going to say Dustin Poirier's been ducking people. I don't really like to use that term, that Dustin Poirier has been ducking anyone, because he does fight people. But I will say, if I can actually pull up his last few fights, I mean, it just feels like it's been a while since he fought a young up and comer. I mean, there's one fight in 2023, Justin Gaethje. All right, one fight in 2022, Michael Chandler. The Conor McGregor fights, the Charles Oliveira fights, I'd say it's been since 2020 when he fought Dan Hooker that it was an actual up-and-comer. But, I mean, at the same time, the last unnotable person Dustin Poirier fought was, you could say, Joe Duffy in 2016. Since then, it's been Jim Miller, Michael Johnson, Eddie Alvarez, Anthony Pettis, Max Holloway, Habib. I mean, there's so many people. So he's been at the top for a while. And as for Benoit Saint Denis, I mean, after debuting in August of 2021 at 170 pounds, not even his natural weight class, he would lose that fight to Elizeu Zaleski dos Santos, but prove his heart. Since then, 5 straight fights, 5 straight finishes. Dude's been on an absolute roll. He's had fight of the nights, performance bonuses, and he's coming off a nasty round 1 knockout, head kick knockout of Matt Frevola back in November. So I'm super pumped to see that fight go down. And I'm glad that the contract was able to be worked out. Also in the news is that Dana White was saying that Jim Miller has made millions in the UFC and never would have in boxing. It's the age-old question. You always see boxers like Francis Ngannou, Tyson Fury, Alexander Usyk, so many of these guys who say that they've made, actually, they not say they have made millions of dollars boxing in these fights, but a majority of the boxers, Dana White says, do not make that much money. And Dana White says that Jim Miller has been great in the UFC. And honestly, I agree. Jim Miller is a legend of the UFC. And there's actually a debate on if he should be in the Hall of Fame. I say yes. I'm very generous with the Hall of Fame inductees. But someone like Daniel Cormier says no. You have to win a championship or hold like some record. But DC, I respectfully disagree with you. Some new fights that have been announced for UFC Vegas 90 on April 6th, headlined by Marvin Vettori and Brendan Allen. We'll have a lightweight bout between Trevor Peek and Charlie Campbell. Trevor Peek, Charlie Campbell, both very entertaining fighters. I mean, Trevor Peek has just come to the UFC, and he's coming off a big win over Muhammad Yahya. He's knocked out Kama Worthy, Eric Gonzalez. This guy is 9-1. He's an absolute joy to watch. His only loss is to Chepe Mariscal, who's an absolute killer. And as for Charlie Campbell, after getting knocked out on Dana White's Contender Series, he came out at UFC, UFC Noche, it might have been, or some other event, and he put on a show, knocking out Alex Reyes. Actually, it was at UFC Noche, now that I'm thinking about it. Earning himself a performance bonus. He is super exciting. I'll be excited for that fight. Elsewhere in the, the MMA atmosphere is Tyron Woodley. That's right, the guy who was knocked out by Jake Paul, former UFC welterweight champion, said this: the UFC paid him similar to Cowboy Cerrone, and he said that MFer never even had a shot at gold. That is certainly a very interesting point by Tyron Woodley. But at the same time, after getting knocked out by Jake Paul, he's kind of lost everyone's respect. I mean, here's a dude who lasted 5 rounds with Kamaru Usman, lasted 5 rounds with Gilbert Burns, with Colby Covington. Actually didn't lose till round 5 of Colby Covington. Lost to Vicente Luque, of course, and then gets knocked out by Jake Paul. Tyron Woodley has kind of been blacklisted by the MMA community. Unfortunate news in the heavyweight division, as Chris Barnett is out of his March 2nd UFC Vegas 8 or March 23rd UFC Vegas 89 bout versus Muhammad Usman. In will step undefeated English fighter Mick Parkin, who is 6-0, I believe. Let me check. He may have more wins. Mick is 8-0 actually, with 2 UFC wins. Last one coming over Jamal Pogues. And as for Muhammad Usman, I mean, he's 3-0 in the UFC. Wins over Zach Pauga, Junior Tafa, and Jake Collier. Won the 30th season of The Ultimate Fighter. Kamaru Usman's younger brother, I think it is. I believe it's his younger. It could be his older. Who knows? It's kind of weird with the weight difference. But, you know, it's unfortunate we won't get to see Chris Barnett. He's such a fun personality in the octagon. I always enjoy watching him. But, you know, if you get hurt, I want you to rest and be all good with yourself. As for that fight, Muhammad Usman, Mick Parkin, that should be an absolute banger, probably on the main card of that Vegas event, which I believe is headlined by Rose Namajunas and Amanda Ribas. Very odd main event. Also, other fights announced actually for that same card is Edmund Shabazian versus Dusko Todorovic. Edmund Shabazian is on a losing streak, man. I think he's lost his last 3 fights. Actually, no, Edmund Shabazian has lost his last 4 fights. He was 12-0 before he fought Derek Brunson. Since then, he's been knocked out. He's been submitted. I mean, it's been tough going for him. And the same goes for Dusko Todorovic, who started out his career a perfect 10-0, then has now dropped 4 of his 7 fights in the UFC. Has been an odd run. Winner shall stay, the loser shall go for that bout, also going down on that same card. And also on this UFC Vegas 89 card on March 23rd, we do have a fun one as Junior Tafa will be taking on Carl Williams. Junior Tafa, younger brother of Justin Tafa, had a massive knockout of Parker Porter, actually sent him packing from the UFC back at, I think it was UFC Singapore back in August. Carl Williams, 2-0 in the UFC, wins over Chase Sherman, Lucas Brzezic. Happy to see him come back to other fights announced that aren't on my sheet. Hinata Diaz will be taking on Austin Lane April 27th at a supposed UFC Apex event. Hinata is 6-0, of course, won on the Contender Series against Eduardo Neves. And Austin Lane is so far 0-1 and 0-1 and 1 in the it's 0-1 0-1. He has a no contest. So when it goes on a scorecard, it goes 0 wins, 1 loss, 0 draws, 1 no contest. Very odd how they list that. But Austin Lane, of course, had a big win over Juan Adams. Actually, I think outside of the UFC, or maybe it was on Day One's Contender Series. But he got knocked out brutally by Justin Tafa. Excited to see how he does coming back. And exciting about also on that UFC Vegas 89 card is Cameron Saman versus Peyton Talbot. Cameron Salmon from another South African fighter, same nation as Dricus du Plessis, your middleweight champion. And he had an interesting start to his career, 9-0, lost his last bout, shockingly, got upsetted. And as for Peyton Talbot, 7-0, 1-0 in the UFC in his debut, lost the first 2 rounds, and then came out in the third and absolutely finished his opponent. Super excited to see that fight going down. And one more fight announcement to round out the UFC news, as Vitor Petrino will be taking on Tyson Pedro at UFC Vegas 87, March 2nd. Vitor Petrino, 10-0, 3-0 in the UFC, light heavyweight fighter, big wins over Anton Turkaljic, and most recently a knockout of Modestas Bukauskas in a brilliant fashion. Tyson Pedro, 10-4 in the UFC. He actually holds wins over Paul Craig and Khalil Roundtree Jr. Excited to see him get back in the octagon. Lots of fun fighters coming back, lots of fun fights coming up, but nothing too massive. But announced no new UFC 300 fights announced just yet. Should be coming up soon, as we are now all of February, all of March. We are 2 months and less than 2 weeks away from UFC 300, and we don't know the main event. Obviously, people are going to buy tickets because it's such a big card. But at the same time, what do we have now? I think we have 11 fights. I think we have 11 fights announced for the card. Might be 12. I can't really recall. But there's one more big fight, and I think the UFC's working on it. It's looking like it could be Adesanya versus du Plessis, but I'm kind of hoping they throw a curveball and throw us a big fight. Maybe like Conor McGregor, Nate Diaz. That's too optimistic of me, I believe. But you know what? I enjoy being optimistic. Let's move on from the UFC for a bit and check on our NBA and NHL leagues. Of course, we used to do that every episode, but it was kind of getting old because no games change. But now we check in every other week or every other episode or something. We check them in once a week. In the Eastern Conference of the NBA, the Celtics are still the best team, and actually they're the best team in the NBA, 37-11 record, so no team has single-digit losses. Everyone has double digits, so we're not getting a greatest team of all time this year. But the Celtics are 8-2 their last 10 on a little 2-game win streak, and illustrious 22-2 at home. That is amazing for season ticket holders. The team's been performing amazing, doing great. In second, the Milwaukee Bucks, 32-16. They are 5 games behind the Celtics. They're on a 2-game losing streak since getting Doc Rivers as their head coach. I have no idea why they fired their past head coach, but since Doc Rivers has joined, the team is yet to win. In third place on an 8-game winning streak, 9-1 their last 10, the New York Knicks. Oh my gosh, on absolute fire. That, RJ Barrett for whoever they trade away. Was it OG Anunoby? Was it whoever they traded? The Knicks have won that trade immaculately. Amazing stuff by the New York Knicks. In fourth, you have the Cavaliers, 29-16. They're on a 3-game win streak, doing pretty good. 76ers, 4-game losing streak, or only 29-17. Very unfortunate stuff there. Pacers in 6th, Heat in 7th. Hornets are on a 5-game losing streak, 10-36. Detroit Pistons, still the worst team in the NBA with a 6-41 record. Ugh, just absolutely terrible. They have won 4 games at home, 2 on the road. Wizards, 9-38. They are yet to get to 10 wins either. In the Western Conference, my Minnesota Timberwolves are the number 1 team still. 34-14 record. We're on a 2-game win streak. Beat the Thunder last time out to take over as the number 1 team. Thunder are in second, 33-15 record, but they're still a game back from the Timberwolves. Love it. Clippers find themselves in third place now, 31-15 record. They're 8-2 their last 10, coming off a big win. Kind of surprised they skyrocketed up here, as the Nuggets, who are 33-16, have now fallen to the fourth spot. They are coming off of a loss, though. 19-4 at home. Very impressive. Kings are in fifth, Suns in sixth, Pelicans seventh, Mavericks down to eighth, despite how good Luka Doncic has been playing. And the Lakers, on a 2-game losing streak, are now at ninth. And there are rumors. These are just rumors, might I add. Like, there's no validity to this whatsoever. But there are rumors that LeBron may be traded. I think it's more fun to think that that transaction, that trade could take place. But I don't know. It seems very illogical that he would be traded. Rockets are in 11th. I actually just saw that they traded Victor Oladipo and 2 first-round picks for Steven Adams or something like that. Very odd trade. The Golden State Warriors, the downfall of the Warriors. When will this happen to the Chiefs? The Warriors ran the NBA for 2015, 2014 to they ran it almost 10 years. Warriors 20 and 24 in 12th. Not too hot. I'm hoping that'll happen to the Chiefs soon. Spurs got into 10 wins despite being on a 2-game losing streak. They are 10-38, but it's good to see. The Trailblazers 15-33, 2-game win streak. So, man, the only teams to not have double-digit wins are the Wizards and the Pistons. Yikes, very, very much so yikes. But anyways, the Western Conference is where I'm very happy to see that the Timberwolves are at the top. We have the most least conference losses, most conference wins. Very, very impressive. I saw someone on TikTok was saying, who is going to be the best out of all the past number 1 draft picks? Who's going to be the best out of all of them? And the consensus is that Victor Wembanyama, when his career is all said and done, will be probably one of the greatest players of all time. And, this could be the case that he's just not on a good team. There's certainly an ego thing with his team where people don't want to admit that they're not the best player on their team, but I don't really know. The NBA can stay for another day. Anyway, on to the NHL, to the ice. To the ice we go. No ice in Minnesota. I mean, it has been amazing weather here in Minnesota. It has made me so happy. I actually went for a walk today. And while on that walk, I got some very good news. I called my mom. I found out that I'm going to actually have a full roommates for next year. I won't have to work on getting a new house. I mean, just amazing stuff. Amazing weather, an amazing day. But as for the ice world, the hockey realm, in the Atlantic Division of the Eastern Conference, tied for the best team in the league, but the best team in the Eastern Conference is the Boston Bruins. 31-9-9. They got 71 points, a plus 45 point differential, 7-1-2 their last 10. They're on a 2-game win streak. In second, the Panthers, 66 points to their name with a 31-14-4 record. They're on a 4-game winning streak. Very impressive. In the Metropolitan Division, the Rangers are on top of that, but they are third in the conference itself, 30-16-3 record. They are 4-5-1 their last 10s. They've kind of been losing. Hurricanes got 61 points, 28-15-5 record. They're on a 3-game heater. Lightning, 27-18-5. They got 59 points. Maple Leafs, 25-14-8. They got 58 points. They're both on 3-game winning streaks. At the bottom of the Eastern Conference, we do have the Blue Jackets with only 42 points to their name. And they're actually tied with the Senators for least amount of points, but they have the Blue Jackets have the least amount of wins. Only 16 wins this season, and also a minus 36 point differential. That is atrocious. Oh my. Capitals, they're what are they? Third to last, 4-game losing streak. The Flyers, 5-game losing streak. Wow. They were on a 5-game win streak. Now they're on a 5-game losing streak. Pretty crazy. So it looks like the best teams in the Eastern Conference are the Bruins, the Panthers, the Rangers, and the Lightning. Hurricanes, too. They've all been performing very well. I love to see that. I very much love to see that. Let's check out the Western Conference, where my Minnesota Wild have 47 points, are second to last in the Central Division, and I'm pretty sure are fourth from the bottom. That is, they're on a 2-game losing streak. Not as bad as the Blackhawks, though, who are last in the NHL with only 30 points, 14 wins to their name. They're also on a 4-game losing streak, minus 72 point differential. But actually, when we go to the Pacific Division, Sharks, 14 wins to their name. They have a minus 92 point differential. Absolutely insane. Canucks, best team in the West, 33 wins, 11 losses in regular, 5 losses in OT, give them 71 points. 8-0-2, their last 10, yet to lose in regulation. Oilers, oh my gosh, Oilers, 29-15-1 record, are on a 16-game winning streak. That is utterly insane. Good job for the Oilers, man. Excellent job. Avalanche, they are on a 3-game win streak. So are the Stars. But most wins in the league, it looks like it belongs to the Canucks. They got 33. Canucks have the most wins. So I'd say the Canucks are the best team in the NHL at the moment. Let's actually, who's on the Canucks? For my hockey list, there's Andrei Kuzmenko. Looks like he's good. Elias Peterson, Quint Hughes, Brock Boeser. Brock Boeser kind of rings a bell. Where did Brock go to college? Brock Boeser, he's from Burnsville, Minnesota. That's why. I knew it. I knew that sounded familiar. Did he go to college? Did he go to college anywhere? I have no idea, but I know he's from Minnesota, so that's why it rings a bell. We'll be back in next week to check in with the leagues. I won't lie, I do care more about the NBA than the NHL, but that's just because I know more. I don't know too much about the NHL in general, so that's kind of why that's how it goes. Let's do our one little NFL segment we have for the episode is we are going to talk about the Pro Bowl. The Pro Bowl, everyone loves the Pro Bowl. No, we don't. The NFL has turned the Pro Bowl into a joke, but I figured nonetheless we'll look at the rosters for the official game. I'm not even going to talk about the skills games, but I don't know. It's just kind of become a joke. I think it's flag football now. There's no stipulations. There's no real reason to play. It just seems like a money grab. In the AFC, your QBs are going to be Tua Tagovailoa, who will be starting, CJ Stroud, and Gardner Minshew, as Patrick Mahomes will not be playing, and I'm hearing that Lamar will not be playing. Very curious how Gardner Minshew made it. That is super fascinating to me. Your running backs will be Raheem Mostert, who will be starting, James Cook of the Bills, and Derrick Henry of the Titans. Interesting. Fullback will be Alec Ingold. Wide receivers, Tyreek Hill and Amari Cooper will be your starters. Keenan Allen and Jamar Chase, your backups. Tight ends, Travis Kelce will be replaced by Evan Ingram, as he should, and David Njoku will be playing. Tackles, guards, centers, does any of that really matter? Myles Garrett, Max Crosby, amazing defensive ends. You also got Chris Jones, Quentin Williams, TJ Watt, and Khalil Mack. That's a dirty outside linebacker duo. Roquan Smith and Patrick Queen, both Ravens, will be your middle linebackers in rotation. And Pat Surtain and Sauce Gardner will be your starting cornerbacks. Who's kicking? AJ Cole's your punter. Justin Tucker, of course, is your kicker. Actually, I was hearing there some rumbling that there was some beef between Justin Tucker and Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce. Apparently, Tucker was practicing kicking field goals while the Chiefs were warming up. He was messing up the routine. He was breaking unwritten rules. I have no idea. I hate these unwritten rules. That stuff is so dumb, and it's so irritating. I just cannot stand that stuff. In the NFC, your starting QBs will be Jalen Hurts will be stepping in, most likely going to be your starter. Then you also have Baker Mayfield and Geno Smith. How about that? Yeah, AFC QBs are much better. Running backs, you got Jahmyr Gibbs replacing McCaffrey, DeAndre Swift, and Kyren Williams. How about that? 2 rookies. And your running backs, C.J. Ham of the Minnesota Vikings will be replacing Kyle Juszczyk as your fullback. Love to see it. Love C.J. Ham. I hope we keep him around. Your wide receivers, CeeDee Lamb, A.J. Brown, Mike Evans, and Puka Nacua. Oh, actually, Amon-Ra St. Brown is replacing A.J. Brown, and DK Metcalf is replacing Mike Evans. How about that? I'm happy Puka's up there, though. That makes me happy. Jake Ferguson will replace George Kittle, and he will join Sam Laporta as your 2 tight ends. How about that? 2 rookie tight ends. I love to see the rookies getting their recognition. Where are my Minnesota Vikings at? Nick Bosa will be replaced by DeMarcus Lawrence of the Dallas Cowboys. Montez Sweat of the Bears made it on defensive end. Good for him. Danielle Hunter, outside linebacker. He'll be starting. Minnesota Viking, love him. Darius Slay will be replacing Charvarius Ward. Deron Bland is starting. Andre DiPaolo of the Minnesota Vikings will be your long snapper. How about that? Brandon Aubrey will be your kicker. Amazing. Love to see that. And Rashid Shaheed will be the kick returner. Oh, that's fine. Actually, who's the kick returner for the AFC? I didn't even realize they did kick returns. I suppose that makes sense. They also have a snubbed section. What in the world? We're going to look at the stuff. Who's the NFL? This is on the NFL's page. Who's the NFL saying was snubbed? What in the goofiness? The NFL sometimes. Your kick returner is Marvin Mims Jr. of the Broncos. Actually, yeah, I think I recall Marvin Mims having some good plays. I don't know if he returned. Did he return a punt? He had to have returned a punt. 2024 Pro Bowl game snubs. Let's check it out. Number 10 is Dustin Hopkins of the Cleveland Browns kicker. Doesn't really matter. Bradley Chubb, offensive outside linebacker for the Miami Dolphins. I guess they did send a lot of Dolphins there. Derek Brown, defensive tackle of the Panthers. Yeah, no Panthers were making it. Kevin Dotson, guard of the Rams. Amon-Ra St. Brown made it in, so he's not snubbed. Josh Allen being snubbed. There has to be a reason for that. Did he get hurt? Did he just decline it? Because that's actually wild. Brandon Ayuk was snubbed nonetheless. I mean, he obviously can't play in the Pro Bowl, but he got snubbed. I do find that kind of BS. Brandon Ayuk's amazing. Antoine Winfield Jr., safety for Tampa Bay Bucks. Wow. Yeah, I'm actually very much surprised he didn't make it. Actually, Antoine Winfield Jr., Minnesota boy. Love to see that. And they also have a huge list of other people who were snubbed. Vikings tight end T.J. Hawkinson. Yeah, he got hurt, though. He got hurt. Jake Elliott, Eagles kicker, I guess. I don't really think so. C.J. Stroud, but he got in. Jared Goff. Did Goff get snubbed? I mean, I don't know. ETN getting snubbed. That was pretty brutal. Ivan Pace Jr., linebacker for the Vikings. Should have given it to him. DJ Moore, the Bears. I would have loved to seen him. And Breece Hall. Yes, Breece Hall actually finished as the number 2 fantasy running back, as I will mention tons of times. And he got snubbed. That is certainly not good. That's certainly not good at all. A lot of action at the NFL Pro Bowl games, but I will not be watching that. Nothing personal, but just not for me. Something that I was going to talk about on this episode, but we're actually going to save for maybe not next week or even the week after, but in a future episode, we're going to be revisiting UFC 100 and 200 as we gear up for the monster that is UFC 300. Technically speaking, 100 and 200 should be your best events of all time. They aren't really. We're going to look at what star power is on there, fighters who fought on both of them that are still in the UFC today. Of course, I believe Jim Miller's the only fighter that is going to fight in all three. I think even if he's injured for UFC 300, he'll hide it. He'll secretly hide it so that he can watch it, so that he can partake in it. But speaking of series stuff that we're not gonna save for another episode is the 48 Laws of Power. We've been grinding, we've been reading through them all, we've been taking everyone with us on our journey to world domination. No, I'm just kidding. It's all about how you use these. It's all about how you treat this information. But honestly, sometimes I read some of the chapters in this 48 Laws of Power book, and I read about my friends. I read about my family members, and it's really trippy. It's really trippy because you realize that everyone can kind of fit into a category. Everyone kind of fits with their own pattern, if you will. But let's read not reread, but just let me tell you about the 4 laws that I read. So law 20 is do not commit to anyone. It says, it is the fool who always rushes to take sides. Do not commit to any side or cause but yourself. By maintaining your independence, you become the master of others, playing people against one another, making them pursue you. Obviously, this doesn't mean be single your whole life. This refers more to when there's 2 sides. Let's say you're a trio of friends. Your 2 friends are fighting. You never take sides. You play both evenly, but you have to be careful how you do it. The first part was basically saying, do not commit to anyone at all, but be courted by all. If you allow people to feel they possess you to any degree, you lose all power over them. By not committing your affections, they will only try harder to win you over. Stay aloof and you gain the power that comes from their attention and frustrated desire. Play the virgin queen, give them hope but never satisfaction. And it basically told a story about Queen Elizabeth I back in the 1500s, who ascended the throne of England and basically turned down every suitor, remained a virgin her whole life apparently, never committed to anyone, and I was just basically she ruled, and she had respect for doing it too, which I find very, very fascinating. She actually had this quote saying, I would rather be a beggar and single than a queen and married. I don't really know if that's the case. I would not want to be a beggar and single, or that rather than a queen than married. I would very much be a king and be married, but who knows? Who knows? This is the image it paints. The virgin queen, the center of attention, desire, and even worship. How about that? Never succumbing to one suitor or the other, the virgin queen keeps them all revolving around her like planets, unable to leave her orbit, but never getting any closer to her. How about that? Find that very cool. Then also told a second part, do not commit to anyone, stay above the fray. Do not let people drag you into their petty fights and squabbles. Very good point. That has happened to me a lot in my life. Actually, one scenario it happened in, we actually don't talk to one of my friends anymore. It's pretty, well, that's a story for another day. Seem interested and supportive, but find a way to remain neutral. Very important. Let others do the fighting while you stand back, watch, and wait. I've watched fights before, never engaged. When the fighting parties are good and tired, they will be ripe for the picking. You can make it a practice, in fact, to stir up quarrels between other people and then offer to mediate. Mediate. I think that's where it's not meditate. Mediate, gaining power as they go between. And this tells the story of this, basically back in the 1400s. Is Isabella d'Este. She was the daughter of the ruler of Italian duce, if you will. Back there, a bunch of different ruling powers back then, and she basically played all different sides of the European area. She had multiple husbands. She had she would always never commit to a country. Like when it was basically like, hey, we want your support. Another country saying, hey, we want your support. She'd be neutral all about it. And actually there's this quote by Balthazar Gracian. He has a lot of famous quotes. Men of great abilities are slow to act, for it is easier to avoid occasions for committing yourself than to come well out of a commitment. Such occasions test your judgment. It is safer to avoid them than to emerge victorious from them. One obligation leads to a greater one, and you come very near to the brink of disaster. I actually have that quote written on my whiteboard. It's the quote of the week. Be careful with obligations and commitments. Often at times we'll just say yes to situations where we don't even think about it. We've all been obligated or committed to something that we never really wanted to do in the first place. An ancient Chinese saying goes, when the snip and the mussel struggle, the fisherman gets the benefit. That is actually very true. There's always someone pulling the strings. Law number 21, play a sucker to catch a sucker, seem dumber than your mark. And this told an excellent story. It actually talked about the Rothschilds, and it basically talked about two miners who were able to finesse a bunch of the rich elites of the United States. That there was a bunch of gold in California, and they paid off the two men that found it like $10 million because they thought they were going to make billions off of it. But turns out that they had actually used a loan that they had given them as like a down payment to buy a bunch of fake gold, plant it all there. So then when they had a what do you call it, like a tester, if you ever, the pawn shop, I got a guy to come in. Yeah, they had a guy who went down and checked it all out. He said it was all good. And then they just told the two because they played dumb. The two, what were they, miners, if you will, that found it. They played dumb and acted like, hey, yeah, we'll take $10 million. We don't really care. When they were, the rich people thought they could finesse them and go, oh, they aren't going to be billionaires. We'll just give them $10 million to split. And, well, they finessed their way out of having to pay them. I'm kind of explaining this kind of weirdly, but just the law itself should be play a sucker to catch a sucker. Seem dumber than your mark. No one likes feeling stupider than the next person, And I'm guilty of this because I know a lot of facts. But sort of when someone says something wrong and you immediately correct them, or if you're trying to seem like better than you are, it's never good to seem better than you are. Well, there's obviously specific situations. Of course, everything's situational. But if you really want to be smart, you really need to play the part. Here's the image for you: the possum. In playing dead, the possum plays stupid. Many a predator has therefore left it alone. Who could believe that such an ugly, unintelligent, nervous little creature could be capable of such a deception? How about that? Sometimes we need to play the possum. We need to play dead, play dumb, so that we are not used to take over. I have no idea. Sometimes I just speak and nothing really comes out. Sometimes I'm just random. That's one of the things about being an only child, kind of talking to myself a lot, not in a weird way. I know people saying like, "Oh, you talk to yourself." That's kind of weird. I feel like everyone talks to themselves. But being like an only child, I would voice all my toys and stuff. I used to just talk to myself downstairs about like UFC and stuff when I was like reading about the fights. And I think it sometimes comes out when I'm talking here, where I'm just talking, but nothing's really saying. But Law 21, play dumber than your mark. Did I just play dumb right now? Did I just fool you all? What do I know? Law number 22, use the surrender tactic, transform weakness into power, and this gives many of examples of people who surrendered and were then able to come back and avenge their situations. But this is all certainly situational, as there are some scenarios where that if you surrender, you'll die. Sometimes it's better to die fighting to try and support the cause. But it gives examples of back in the 1950s when the Red Scare, communists in Hollywood. And there was an actual known communist, what was his name? Edwards? Or it was, let me find his name. I want to find his name. It was, was it Edward Breck? No, it was Bertolt Brecht, who was a German writer, known communist. And when he was brought up to the stand to sort of testify, like the congressional hearing was going to talk to them, he basically surrendered, basically said like, yeah, like I supported this, but he said it in like a very mellow-tone way. He said that he hated Germany, so it's kind of like, yeah, I'm a communist, but I hate Germany. In my films I've said I hate Germany, and they actually let him go while other of the people they talked to got persecuted, and he fled to Germany and lived out his life as a director. So it's certainly interesting how you deal with this. It's kind of interesting. Some of these laws, it's hard to picture into our own personal lives when we live such civil, calm sort of lives. But if your back's ever against the wall, sometimes it's best to surrender. No one hates anyone more than someone who surrenders. I mean, how about when you're playing someone? You're playing someone in a video game, and you're starting to get up big, and they just go, "Okay, I'm done. You can win." Or when you're in an argument with someone, they go, "Okay, I'm not even gonna fight you. You can win." That pisses you off. That really does piss you off, because you're kind of like, well, like, yeah, I know I'm better, but I want to keep proving that I'm better than you. Or like when you're up in like a game or something and everyone just stops trying. There's something about people stopping to trying, surrendering, that really irritates you. And then when you go after them, you kind of look like the bad guy. Certainly very interesting. The final law that I read, I believe last night before bed, was concentrate your forces. Law number 23, conserve your forces and energies by keeping them concentrated at their strongest point. You gain more by finding a rich mine and mining it deeper than by flirting from one shallow mine to another. Intensity defeats extensity every time. When looking for sources of power to elevate you, find the one key patron, the fat cow who will give you milk for a long, long time. And they use the example of the Rothschilds, how we all know about the Rothschilds, the family that controls the whole world. Started off as just simple banking people back in the 1800s, and the father sent out all of his sons across Europe to gain control in all the banks, and eventually they controlled basically all of Europe. And the weird thing they did, which I found out, is that they actually chose to intermarry with their kids' children. It was super weird. So one of the youngest Rothschilds actually married his oldest brother's daughter, was just absolutely wild. And they intermarried to remain concentrated in their forces as a family so that no outsiders could come. I'm pretty sure since then they've married into other families and they've chosen like directly who they're marrying into. But man, it was just wild to hear that they just concentrate all their forces into one family, one unit, and by keeping their forces concentrated into one family unit, that was how they were able to gain so much power. Here's the image to paint for you. The arrow. You cannot hit two targets with one arrow. If your thoughts stray, you miss the enemy's heart. Mind and arrow must become one. Only with such concentration of mental and physical power can your arrow hit the target and pierce the heart. I really take this law and concentrate my forces as focusing on one task. For instance, tomorrow I have to go to the gym. I have to do my microeconomics homework. I have to actually go to a Zoom for like this, accounting thing. I have to do something at Batteries Plus. I have to do my international business homework. I have to do my laundry. And by separating that up into different tasks and focusing all my energy on one, not trying to break them up, not trying to do my laundry, do my homework, do a Zoom all at once, by focusing completely on one thing, I can best execute at it. And you can also compare this to the gym, where when you go to the gym and let's say you hit a little bench press and then you go hit some lat pull downs and then you go hit some barbell curls. Then you go hit some squats. You're hitting everything, but you're not hitting it to its maximum intensity. Now, let's say I go and I do some one-arm pull-downs. Then I go and do some lat pull-downs. I do some back pulls and stuff. Just focus on one thing for a day. I have a back day. I have a chest day. I have a leg day. You're focusing all your energy on that one muscle, and that's how you get it to grow. So that's kind of what I take out of it. That's kind of what I take out of this law, and it's certainly a very, very important one to always be focused on one thing at a time. Multitasking is kind of a myth from what I've heard, and it's tough to do for a lot of people. Next episode, actually, yeah, but as for me, probably after this is over, I'll be reading Law 24, which says, play the perfect courtier. I don't know what that means off the top of my head. What is a courtier? Is that like friend? Is that enemy? I don't know. The courtier could be a number of things, but this book continues to keep us going along. We're only halfway through. So Law 24 will actually be halfway through. We'll have to see how it all pans out once it's all over. But we got two more things to talk about on this episode. One being our 2021 in review of my time in the UFC in 2021. And to cap us off, we'll be giving a full preview of UFC Vegas 85. I'm going to take a quick intermission. See, I'm stumbling. I need some water. I need to get locked back in before we review an entire year of 2021 when I got into UFC. Actually, I was already in UFC, but you know what I mean. Alrighty, we are back, and UFC 2021, now that I remember a lot more, this was basically the coming out of COVID year. We started having more events at stadiums and stuff, and this was a very crazy year in the UFC, so let's revisit it, starting with some of our releases and retirements. By the way, 43 total events in the UFC in that year from January 16th to December 18th. Ali Quinta retired this year. You can still find him in UFC EA Sports 5 3 years after he retired. That just amazed me. Alan Jouban also retired. Alexander Yakovlev was released in June. Alistair Overeem was released in March, but he was going to be out of the UFC no matter what. A lot of crazy stuff here. Bartosz Fabinski was released. I feel like he's been in other promotions. Brock Weaver, who I thought was going to be amazing, was released. Dan Hardy was officially released. He commentated some UFC events. Actually fought George St. Pierre, I'm pretty sure, for the belt. Damian Maia's contract ran out this year. Diego Sanchez was released this year. He had a very, very odd ending to his career. Gian Viante retired. Impa Kansagana was released in December. Impa Kansagana, the man who won the light heavyweight division of the PFL's tournament. Amazing comeback story to see. Jimmy Flick actually retired in April, and he actually won on our last UFC event. How about that? Joseph Benavidez retired. Junior Dos Santos was released. Kevin Lee was released in November. It's funny how he always finds his way back, I feel. Marie Renault retired that summer. Mirsad Bektic retired. I'm pretty sure you can still find him in the game. Omar Akhmedov was released. He actually competed in the PFL, did pretty decent. Paul Felder retired. I remember that. He retired in May. Very unfortunate. He might be coming back this year, though. He may be coming back. Tyron Woodley's contract ended in April. And Yancy Medeiros was released in August. Another fighter you can oddly find in the game. Some interesting UFC fighters who debuted in 2021. In November, debuted Alex Pereira, who would then go on in the next 3 years to win the UFC's middleweight and light heavyweight championships. Amazing. Benoit Saint-Denis, who we mentioned earlier, he debuted on this in this year. Carlos Uleberg, notable UFC light heavyweight, he debuted in this year. Chris Curtis debuted also in November. Pretty interesting. Erin Blanchfield, who could be fighting for the women's flyweight belt this year. She, actually my pick to win it, she debuted this year. Gilbert Urbina debuted in 2021. We'll actually be talking about him in a bit. Anyone else? JP Buys, he has one of the funniest UFC runs. He had like 4 fights and was knocked down like 8 times. No, Cape debuted in the UFC. It's funny how bad he started off and then how good he jumped to be. Michael Chandler debuted in January. One of the wildest years for Michael Chandler, actually. Thinking back on Michael Chandler, 3 fights, all amazing. Tabitha Ritchie, Terrence McKinney, Umar Nurmagomedov. A lot of fun fighters. Any suspensions? TJ Dillachaw's suspension came to an end. Anyone else? Marc-Andre Barriou's suspension came to an end. Yair Rodriguez, his suspension came to an end. Yair was suspended for having 3 whereabout failures in the following year. Very odd. Did not even know that. The Ultimate Fighter, Brian Battle and Ricky Tercios won their seasons. Gilbert Urbina was a runner-up, and Brady Heisted was a runner-up. Ricky Tercios and Brady Heisted both have proven they aren't that good. The Ultimate Fighter has been kind of lacking the past years. It has been very much so lacking, but we'll see. We'll see how it all plays out. Whatever season comes this year. Let's kick us off with what we started the year with. I remember I was in my living room watching this. It was sort of midday when I watched Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar, which went down on Fight Island, and this was absolutely ridiculous. I mean, first off, no one really notable on the prelims. Li Jingliang knocked out Santiago Ponzinibbio, who came back after 3 years. Pretty funny. But in the main event, Max Holloway absolutely destroyed Calvin Kattar, setting the striking record. I remember I actually picked Calvin Kattar and watched it live. I'm like, okay, you can stop this. And the ref was just not stopping it. An onslaught for Max Holloway. Super interesting. I mean, it was a wild fight. And Max Holloway versus Calvin Kattar is one of the craziest openings to UFC year that I think we'll ever have, probably. Following that, we actually had a Wednesday card, Michael Chiesa and Neil Magny. I recall watching this before I left for work, and it was absolutely a waste of my time as it was so boring. Michael Chiesa just grappled Neil Magny through 5 rounds. It's pretty crazy that Michael Chiesa at one point was nearing like the top 10 or whatever of the or was nearing the top 5. Actually was fighting for a belt soon almost in the UFC. It's crazy about that. Manon Fiorot fought on this card. She'll be fighting Erin Blanchfield coming up at the end of March. Umar Nurmagomedov got submission. Ricky Simone got an arm triangle on the prelims. How about that? Ricky Simone. Love that guy. Leron Murphy won on the main card. Yeah, this is one of the most irrelevant cards, I think, in UFC history. But then we got to UFC 257, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor. I went over to my buddy's house for us to watch this, and it was absolutely wild. I mean, such a good time. On the prelims, by the way, Amir Albazi and Movsar Evloev on the early prelims, both getting wins. On the regular prelims, you had Julia Pena getting her win over Sarah McMahon, got her a title shot. Unreal. I can't believe she got a title shot for that. Arman Sarukian beat Matt Favola on the prelims. Pretty funny. I remember the main card kicking off, Marina Rodriguez getting the second round TKO over Amanda Hebus. Mahmoud Muradov finishing Andrew Sanchez in round 3. Joanne Calderwood and Jessica Eye putting on a snooze fest. Then Michael Chandler knocking out Dan Hooker in round 1 was absolutely wild. And then Dustin Poirier and Conor McGregor. McGregor won round 1 and then proceeded to lose in round 2. Got knocked out 2.5 minutes in. What a wild card. I remember the shock factor for that. By the way, first event forever with a crowd, which was amazing to see. But just the sheer shock of Dustin Poirier actually beating Conor McGregor. It was very humbling as a McGregor fan. And by the way, that player model of what he looked like with a bald head and a beard is still used in the game today, which is not what McGregor looks like at all. I find that pretty funny. It was back to the Apex in February where we had Alistair Overeem and Alexander Volkov, which was the last time we ever saw Alistair Overeem in the UFC and ever will. Pretty fun fact. He was brutally knocked out by Volkov in round number 2. I mean, just was pieced up throughout the whole fight. Very sad to see, but Volkov still a notable person today in the UFC. On the main card, you had Belinda Ayush defeating Diego Ferreira. Wow, by split decision. Don't even remember that fight. Pantoja taking on Mel Cape. Clay Guida, Michael Johnson. Corey Sandhagen knocking out Frankie Edgar in 28 seconds with flying knee. One of the most notable knockouts in UFC history. Just hits him with a knee, and he falls straight down. Amazing stuff. I do remember that. What I sadly remember is UFC 258, which is one of the biggest wastes of money that I've ever seen. This was absolutely awful main card. Just the whole card in general. Did this keep falling apart or something? I'm very much confused. Kelvin Gastelum. I just think from the get-go that this was just there was never star power on this card at all. I mean, main event, Kamaru Usman finishes Gilbert Burns' best moment of the card. On the co-main event, you had Alexa Grasso defeating Macy Barber. Main card, you also had Calvin Gastelum and Heinisch in a snooze fest. Ricky Simone defeating Brian Kelleher in a snooze fest. And Julian Marquez, after dropping the first 2 rounds and majority of the third round, would come back to beat Maki Pitolo. Bilal Muhammad would win on the prelims. That's all I got. UFC 258, very, very forgettable. Ugh, I actually went 1-4 on my picks for that card. Next up was Curtis Blades, Derek Lewis. I remember this. Curtis Blades winning round 1, and then round 2 shoots for his first takedown of the fight and gets hit with an uppercut, drops down cold. Absolutely wild. You also had Tom Aspinall defeating Andrei Arlovski but with a rear naked chokehold. This was when I first started taking him legitly, Tom Aspinall. Sergey Spivak got a win on the prelims. Yeah, that's all I guess. So pretty rough start to 2021 now looking back on it. Another Apex card, Rosenstruck versus Gane. This was Cyril Gane's first main event. Just absolutely outboxed Rosenstruck through 5 rounds. Very, very much of a snooze fest. Actually, there was only one finish on this card. Wow, and that was Ronnie Lawrence TKOing Vince Cachero. How about that? Fight of the night was Pedro Munoz versus Jimmy Rivera. That was a fun fight. You had Thiago Moises winning, Alex Caceres winning, Maribel Silva winning, Magomed Ankalaev and Nikita Krylov. Wow. I wonder if we've ever had a UFC fight event where it's been all decisions. I hope not. I really hope not. UFC 259 was next, and I feel like I remember this. Actually, I do remember UFC 259 because I just hung out with my current girlfriend, and she basically told me that she wanted to just be friends. So I was pretty heartbroken that I watched this. It actually turned out working out. Remaining friends was the best choice. Sometimes it's better to remain friends for a bit before diving right into a relationship. But I was treated to just 5 straight interesting fights. UFC 259 on the prelims, early prelims by the way, Amanda Lemos, Sean Brady, Kenny and Chukani all getting finishes. Pretty wild. Kai Kara France getting a round 1 knockout of Rogerio Bontorin. Askar Askarov retiring Jose Benavidez. Kyler Phillips winning a decision over Song Yadong. Talk about the oddest thing ever. Dominic Cruz winning a split decision against Casey Kenny. Main card kicks off. Alexander Rakic and Thiago Santos put on a snooze fest. Islam Makhachev grapples Drew Dober to death, submitting him in round 3. Aljamain Sterling, Perion, the infamous illegal knee DQ. We'll forget that. Amanda Nunes literally destroying Megan Anderson, showing the skill gap in the women's divisions. And then Jan Blachowicz and Angela Adesanya putting on one of the most boring fights I've ever seen. Wow, and it was like, dang, Adesanya cannot grapple. Following that, we had UFC Fight Night, Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad at the Apex 2. And oh my gosh, it's crazy to see where both these guys went from here. There was an eye poke from Leon Edwards in this fight, which is just an absolute vibe killer. Kicking off the card actually was Matthew Semmelsberger knocking out Jason Witt in 16 seconds, would turn out to be Matthew Semmelsberger's best career achievement. Charles Jourdain would get a round 3 TKO on this card. Matthias Nakalu would defeat Minnow Cape by split decision. Davey Grant knocking out Jonathan Martinez, I remember that. Dan Ige's 22-second knockout of Gavin Tucker, 1-shot KO. Ryan Spann destroying Misha Sergadov in round 1. And yeah, Leon Edwards and Bilal Muhammad. It's crazy they might be rematching soon. That's pretty wild to look back on. Then we had a UFC on ESPN, Brunson versus Holland. Oh my gosh, another brutal fight. It was Kevin Holland talking trash the whole fight as he got brutally outgrappled by Derek Brunson before winning the final round of the fight. You also had Max Griffin getting a nice KO of Song Kinan. Tai Tuivasa coming back to beat Harry Hunsucker. Pretty fun fight there. Andre Yanez getting a KO. Yeah, nothing really memorable on that card. UFC 260 though. Stipe Miocic versus Francis Ngannou. The rematch. Who will ever forget this? Pretty wild. And there was actually supposed to be a featherweight championship co-main event between Volkanovski and Ortega, but that was rescheduled for later in the year. Johnny Walker was supposed to face Jimmy Crute, but Walker was pulled out of the fight. Pretty crazy. And then Crute was scheduled to fight Anthony Smith the next pay-per-view. Wow, I didn't even remember that. Ngannou, of course, knocked out Stipe in the main event in round 2. Ngannou was in his prime this night. Amazing performance. In the co-main, Vicente Luque submitting Tyron Woodley, as I mentioned earlier, with a Bravo choke. I believe that's an anaconda choke. Sean O'Malley put on an excellent performance here against Thomas Almeida. And you even had Alonzo Menfield getting a shoulder choke on the prelims. How about that? 260, one of the better Apex cards, in my opinion. UFC on ABC was supposed to be Darren Till and Marvin Vettori. Darren Till pulled out, the pullout king, if you ask me. That's why he has no children. And he took on Kevin Holland, and we got a repeat Holland versus Brunson, as Vettori just grappled Holland to death. Actually, I'm pretty sure tied a middleweight record or something. It was so goofy. Elsewhere, you had Arnold Allen and Sodiq Yusuff, Mackenzie Dern submitting Nia Nunes with an armbar. Love to see that. Julian Marquez and Sam Alvey swinging for the fences. I do remember that. And Daniel Rodriguez rearranging Mike Perry's face live on ABC in a bloody fashion. Actually, Matus Gamrot knocking out Scott Holtzman. I do recall that. Interesting card. Nothing memorable. In April 2021, I remember I was at my girlfriend's house watching this. Whitaker and Gastelum. I don't even think we watched it. It was so boring. All decisions on the main card. Robert Whitaker just outclassed Calvin Gastelum. But who was Whitaker supposed to fight? Whitaker was supposed to fight Paulo Costa. Gosh, the number of times that fight has been scheduled and never occurred. Andrei Arlovsky got a win on this card. Alexander Romanov got a win. Yeah, pretty lame card if you ask me. But UFC 261, one of my favorite pay-per-view main cards of all time. I remember I was hanging out with my girlfriend. I believe this was like our prom night or something. I think it might have been. And I come back and I watched this main card, and it was just absolutely electric. So this event was originally supposed to be in Singapore, but they had COVID protocol, so it was moved to Jacksonville, Florida, and this crowd was all here for it. I mean, prelims, nothing really too interesting. I mean, Brendan Allen getting a submission win on here, cool to look at, but the main card kicks off. Anthony Smith, Jimmy Crute. I mean, Jimmy Crute's leg literally giving out. The doctor having to stop it after round one. After putting out pretty impressive performance against Anthony Smith, both of their careers have kind of gone down since then. Then, next fight, Uriah Hill, Chris Weidman. Chris Weidman snaps his leg on Uriah Hill's thigh, bends it around, breaks it. Absolutely grotesque, absolutely shocking. I remember watching that like, oh my gosh. And then, 3 straight title fights, 3 straight W's. Valentina fights Jessica Andrade. Before the fight, Jessica Andrade said her grappling would make the difference in this fight. Valentina would land 7 of 7 takedowns and TKO her in round number 2. Classic Valentina performance. Co-main event, Rose Namajunas fighting the champion Zhang Weili for the belt, gets a minute and 18-second head kick KO. And I mean, the crowd pop for that was absolutely nuts. Something out of WWE. Lands some follow-up punches, and Rose Namajunas would go on to win. It's wild to see where they both ended up. Zhang Weili is currently the champion, and Rose Namajunas kind of at the bottom of the barrel. Main event, Kamaru Usman, Jorge Masvidal, and who doesn't remember the round 2 one-punch knockout? And I predicted this before this fight that Usman would knock him out, and it came true. I wish I had that on on record. I wish I had that on record, but you'll just have to take my word for it. That was amazing. Following that, into May 1st, the last day I worked at Cub Foods. I will never work at Cub Foods again. I encourage no one to work at Cub Foods. But this card on this day was Jiri Prochazka versus Dominic Reyes, and I witnessed one of the wildest knockouts when Jiri hit a spinning back elbow with 30 seconds left in round number 2. Dominic Reyes face plants. That was an amazing fight of the night. Absolutely love that. Actually, in the co-main event, Giga Chikadze would knock out Cub Swanson in a minute with a nasty body kick. You also had Ian Kudalaba 10-8ing Dustin Jacoby in round number 1, and then Jacoby winning the next 2 rounds. Pretty funny. Sean Strickland winning on this card. Rob Dovasheli winning on this card. But that Jiri knockout, oh my goodness, amazing. What is this? Next up, we had an Apex event. Oh, it was Michelle Watterson versus Marina Rodriguez. Very boring. Nothing happened. Alex Morono TKOing Donald Cerrone. Very sad to see that. Neil Magny defeating Jeff Neal. Wow. Neil Magny, ultimate gatekeeper. Love that. Gregor Giuseppe TKOing Diego Ferreira in round number 2. That was pretty fun. Phil Hawes actually getting a win on this card. Yeah. Pretty relevant. Wow, a lot of relevant fight nights this year. But UFC 262, I was at my girlfriend's house watching this, and I was all locked in. I mean, prelims, when we look back on, Andre Muniz, he actually broke Renato Souza's arm, like he put him in an armbar and broke it. Pretty wild. But the main card, Edson Barbosa, getting that weird knockout of Shane Burgos in round number 3, clips him. All right, Shane still standing, and Shane just hobbles back to the cage, hits it, falls down, and Edson just hammers away on him. Wild KO. Boring fight between Chukagian and Vivian Araujo. Bontrain and Matt Schnell, a snoozer. Beneil Dariush and Tony Ferguson, a snoozer. And then one of the most rewatchable 5 minutes and 19 seconds as Charles Oliveira has a wild first round against Michael Chandler, almost gets finished, comes back right away in round 2, drops Chandler, fouls him up, drops him again, and Charles Oliveira became the new UFC lightweight champion. I remember I had my picks as Chandler and Beneil Dariush, and I switched them to Oliveira and Ferguson. That was back when I still had faith in Tony Ferguson, but Charles Oliveira came through for me, and I've been a fan of that boy ever since. I've always wanted to dye my hair blonde. I've always wanted to bleach my hair blonde for that boy. Absolutely love it. UFC Fight Night, Fonten Garbrandt, absolute snoozer. Nothing notable on here? I mean, this was Cody Garbrandt just getting outclassed by Rob Font. Both guys are kind of in the dumps. It's pretty crazy. Carlos Esparza TKO'd Jan Chaonin on this card. I still can't believe that. Jack Hermanson beat Edmund Shabazian on this card. Ben Rothwell got a round 2 guillotine choke of Chris Barnett. I find that very odd. Demiris Magulov was still in the UFC at the time. How about that? June 5th, I remember this was actually my current roommate's grad party. And it was Rosenstruck versus Sakai. And I remember I literally was watching this on my phone. Actually, I think I went home to finish it. On the prelims, Manfiora defeating Tabitha Ritchie by TKO. Interesting enough. But you had Santiago Ponzinibbio getting a win, Roman Dolidze getting a win, Marcin Tybura TKOing Walt Harris. In the main event, Jairzinho Rozenstruik dropping Augusto Sakai with a second left to win. Yeah, the downfall of Augusto Sakai, pretty brutal. UFC 263, I believe I watched this in my living room. So much promise for this event, but nothing really much happened. You had Terrence McKinney debuting in here, knocking out Matt Frevola in 7 seconds. That is probably the fastest knockout I've ever seen live. Pretty wild. Movsar Evloev remaining undefeated on here. Lauren Murphy getting a win. Brad Riddell and Drew Dober putting on a fight of the night. You had Paul Craig breaking Jamal Hill's arm and then TKOing him. Paul Craig, the only man to beat Magomedov Ankalaev and Jamal Hill, who are probably fighting for the belt next, is pretty crazy to me. Paul Craig, submission expert. He's beaten everyone. I feel like he's lost everyone. Bilal Muhammad would retire Damian Maia with this fight in an absolute snooze fest. Leon Edwards and Nate Diaz would put on one of the most forgettable fights of all time, except for the final minute where Nate Diaz almost knocked out your current champion, Leon Edwards, which is aged as just Nate Diaz is a badass. Brandon Moreno would then defeat Devson Figueiredo in their rematch, which I absolutely loved. Then the main event, Israel Adesanya and Marvin Vettori, an absolute snooze fest. One of Adesanya's forgettable performances. Then, June 19th, we had the Korean Zombie's final win in the UFC when he beat Dan Ige in the main event by unanimous decision. Also on here, had Marlon Vera getting a win. You had Matt Brown knocking Diego Oliva out cold. That was pretty interesting. That's it. But shout out to Chan Sung Jung getting its final win, June 2021. Another event that went down, I believe this was midday because I was waiting to go somewhere. This was Cyril Gane versus Alexander Volkov in the main event. Actually, Alexander Volkov's a former Bellator heavyweight champion. That's so weird he fought in Bellator. Cyril Gane outclassed him through all 5 rounds, won every single round. Unbelievable. Tanner Boser would get his final UFC win against Ovince St. Preux. Interesting enough. Renato Moicano, who we'll mention later in the episode, submitted Jai Herbert. Interesting enough. Shavkat Rakhmonov, his second UFC appearance out here. If only I knew how good Shavkat would be. And then July 10th, the same day as my graduation party, Dustin Poirier, Conor McGregor 3. Oh my gosh, I was so hyped for this card. Actually, interesting enough, Duplessis was supposed to take on Trevin Giles in this event. Sean Brady and Kevin Lee were supposed to fight on this event. Sean O'Malley and Louis Smolka were supposed to fight on this event, and all those fights got canceled. Prelims, you had Brad Tavares, I'm pretty sure getting his final UFC win. Jennifer Maia getting a win. Oh, Duplessis did fight Trevor Giles on here. I think this fight was moved to here. Ito Pura beat Ryan Hall. How about Ito Pura and Dricus Duplessis? Dricus Duplessis fought on the prelims here. Currently your champion, Ito Pura, in less than 2 weeks should be your new champion for featherweight. Michelle Pereira beat Nico Price, and Max Griffin beat Carlos Condit. Main card gets kicked off. I remember watching this in the basement with all of my cousins there, my girlfriend, all my buddies. It was a wild assortment of people. And Sean O'Malley just turning Chris Mutani's face into an absolute just bloody mess. I then watched Irene Aldana TKO Yana Kunitskaya. I then watched Tai Tuivasa knock out Greg Hardy in shocking fashion. Gilbert Burns and Steven Thompson was so depressing. The fact that Wonderboy can beat anyone standing, but grappling is his weakness, is hilarious to me. And then Conor McGregor breaking his freaking ankle against Dustin Poirier. I still cannot believe that happened. Unreal. Islam Makhachev versus Thiago Moises. I believe I was working at Menards at the time, so I must have watched this afterwards. Jair Rodriguez was supposed to headline this event versus Max Holloway, but that was moved to a different week. Instead, Islam Makhachev would submit Thiago Moises in round number 2. Misha Tate would get a TKO win. Mantus Gamrot would hit Jeremy Stevens with a Kimura. Cool. Mandalimos got TKO on here. Yeah, Islam Makhachev's rise to the top. Very impressive to see. Oh boy, here it is, July 24th, the biggest robbery I've ever seen. Corey Sandhagen versus TJ Dillashaw. I have no idea how TJ Dillashaw won this fight. Corey Sandhagen should have won that, and it altered history pretty well. But everything's working out now, as it looks like Sandhagen's going to get his title shot. Brendan Allen got a win on the prelims. Nazimov, the main event this weekend, he got a win on the prelims. But I remember this more as TJ Dillashaw unrightfully winning. Unreal. July 31st, we actually had Sean Strickland in his first UFC main event fighting Uriah Hall, and there's many times throughout this fight that I thought Sean Strickland could have finished Uriah Hall. He never did. Oddly enough, the co-main event was Cheyenne Bays defeating Gloria De Paula. No idea how that ended up being the co-main event, but Cheyenne Bays had a nasty head kick knockout. Oh my gosh, absolutely brutal. Anything else on this card? No, not whatsoever. Sean Strickland, always fun to watch. I believe I watched this in my living room. Yes, UFC 265. I watched this with my cousins, Ryan and Kevin. This was a fun one. On the prelims, Mel Cape getting a round 1 flying knee knockout. Rafael Fiziev defeating Bobby Green by unanimous decision. Main card kicks off. Song Yadong defeats Casey Kenny. I predicted it. Tisha Torres defeats Angela Hill, did not predict that. Vicente Luque submitting Michael Chiesa by Darce-Choke. Oh, I'd love to see that. Then Jose Aldo defeating Pedro Munoz, and my cousin Ryan would have gone 5-0, but he changed his pick from Cyril Gane to Derek Lewis, and I watched Derek Lewis freeze up in front of his hometown of Houston as Cyril Gane became your interim heavyweight champion. Always been a Cyril Gane fan. Pretty sure I've picked him in every fight he's been in except the Ngannou fight. I'm pretty sure. I haven't picked him against John Jones. Pretty interesting enough. Following that, this was actually the final event I thought I was ever going to watch at my house. I was so dramatic. Final event before my freshman year of college began. Jared Cannonier versus Calvin Gastelum. I think I watched this at my girlfriend's house. Nothing notable happened on here. Alex Pinto submitted Brandon Royval. There's something notable for you. But Cannonier just beat Gastelum 3 of the 5 rounds. Pretty boring. Then, the first ever event I watched at my college dorm, Edson Barbosa versus Giga Chikadze. I actually watched this before going to hang out with all my boys, I'm pretty sure. I thought Edson would win, but Giga kicked his butt. Pretty impressive. You also had your Ultimate Fighter finales with Brian Battle winning and Ricky Tercios winning, interesting enough. Kevin Lee losing to Daniel Rodriguez. Andre Petrosky winning. Yeah, nothing. Nothing happened on here. Giga Chikadze's rise to the top began, I don't know. Ooh, there we go, September 4th. I absolutely love this card. It was at the Apex, but it was United Kingdom themed, as Derek Brunson submitted Darren Till in round number 3, which I predicted. You also had Tom Aspinall defeating Sergey Spivak, which I predicted. Alex Bruno defeated David Zabato, which I predicted. Khalil Roundtree Jr. Just destroying Modestus Bukakis' leg, which I predicted. And I went 5-0 on the main card as Paddy Pimblett made his UFC debut and won in round number 1. The fight of the night was Molly McCann and Ji Yeon Kim. That's so random. That is just so weird to me. And I actually have this bookmarked in my Safari notes. So whenever I search up UFC stats, this event pops up. I have no idea how to change that. Keeping our Apex events rolling, you had Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. I don't really know. Anthony Smith humbled Ryan Spann, submitting him in round number 1. Ian Kulaba won here. Armin Sarukian got a round 1 TKO of Christos Giagos. Very impressive. Joaquin Buckley got a round 3 KO over Antonio Arroyo, and then advocate for him to keep him on in the UFC. That ended up not happening. Aaron Blanchfield won on the prelims. Hockwell Pennington won on the prelims. I have nothing else. UFC 266. Oh man, this was a blast. I loved watching UFC 266. Watched it in my dorm room alone. And I had a beer for every fight I predicted wrong. And oddly enough, I feel like I drank a lot at this. Or no, I didn't drink a lot. I predicted a decent amount correctly. This was an amazing card. By the way, Matthew Semmelsberger knocked out Martin Sano Jr. in 15 seconds. That's his UFC highlight right there. Nick Maximoff got a win on here. Jalen Turner, round 1 submission of Euros Medic. Interesting enough. Talia Santos would win on this card. Merab Dvalishvili would fight, oh my gosh, Merab Dvalishvili. And, oh my gosh, Marlon Moraes, that is one of the wildest comebacks I've ever seen. Marlon Moraes almost knocked out Merab in round number 1, came back to get brutalized. Main card, Jessica Andrade pieces up Cynthia Calvillo in round number 1. Curtis Blades puts on a snooze fest against Jairzinho Rozenstruik. Robbie Lawler and Nick Diaz, just watching Nick Diaz in that octagon was so sad to see. It's absolutely just so sad to see. He did not belong in there. Valentina Shevchenko then bullied Lauren Murphy for 19 minutes, and then with a minute left in round 4 decided, oh wait, I can just finish her, and just beat her silly. The ref was kind of like, okay, just knock that off. So that was a snooze fest, but then the main event, the fight of the night, Alexander Volkanovski, Brian Ortega, one of the wildest fights I've watched live. It's so weird you see a one-side fight where Volkanovski is clearly winning, but it's so entertaining. There was a guillotine choke by Brian Ortega in top mount, and then a triangle choke where I thought Ortega was going to win, but Volkanovski proved he's the greatest featherweight of all time by surviving it. Absolutely amazing. October 2nd, he then had Thiago Santos, Johnny Walker. I actually remember I was at a hibachi. Is that what that's called? And they cook the food right in front of you on a square table. I remember I kept watching this on my phone, and this was one of the worst cards ever. This is actually one of the worst cards ever. I mean, there's no highlights here. Alexander Hernandez knocking out Mike Breeden in round 1. That's the highlight. You had Kevin Holland and Kyle Dawkins clashing heads. You had Thiago Santos and Johnny Walker doing nothing for 5 rounds. Absolutely embarrassment to the UFC. October 9th, another Apex card. Wow, there's actually a lot of terrible events in 2021. The pay-per-views were the best part. Marina Rodriguez defeating Mackenzie Dern in the main event. That's the only highlight I can pull from this. Actually, nothing there. Oh, another snoozer, October 16th, Aspen Ladd, Norma Dumont. This is one of the worst cards ever as well. You did have Jim Miller knock out Eric Gonzalez. That was pretty cool. Manny Fiorot defeating Mario Bueno Silva. Pretty wild to see where they're both at right now. And Nate Landwehr getting a win. How about that? October 23rd, Paulo Costa versus Marvin Vettori. It was actually a pretty good fight. Pretty even fight. I was a big Marvin Vettori fan at the time, so I was happy to see him win. But, yeah, other than that, nothing much. Gregory Rodriguez got a performance bonus for knocking out Jung-Young Park in round number 2. That's all I can give you there. Then, the best stretch in UFC history, back-to-back pay-per-views, back-to-back bangers. UFC 267, headlined by Jan Blachowicz and Glover Teixeira, and oh my goodness, I absolutely loved this card. I was actually 5-0 on my picks before Jan Blachowicz lost. On the prelims, interesting enough, you had Andre Petroski getting a win. Leroy Murphy, after getting out-grappled by Makwan Amirkhani brutally in round 1, knocks him out with a knee 14 seconds in round number 2. So cool. Benoit Saint-Denis up at 170, fought Eliseo Zaleski dos Santos. Ultimately lost that, but showed so much heart. Main card gets kicked off. Magomedov Ankalaev beats Volkan Ozdemir. Pretty boring. Hamzat Shamaev mauls Li Jingliang in round number 1. Probably his last and one of his best performances ever. Our last best performance. And not the last time we'll see Hamzat. Volkov would piece up Tibura for the 3 rounds. Islam Makhachev would just destroy Dan Hooker. Petr Yan and Corey Sandhagen would put on a... Did that win fight of the night? It did, as it should have. And then Glover Teixeira became the oldest man to win a belt, I'm pretty sure, when he beat Jan Blachowicz. Entertaining enough. Following week, remember I got COVID. I was in my basement alone watching this, and this was an absolutely amazing card. Absolutely loved UFC 268. On the prelims, the early prelims, you had Ian Gary debuting, getting a round 1 knockout. Prelims kick off, your man, the main event. We're going to mention this fight later. Nasruddin Imavov finishing Edmund Shabazian in round number 2. Chris Curtis knocking out Phil Haas. Bobby Green knocking out Ali Quinta. And Alex Pereira, after getting out grappled in round 1, knocking out Andreas Michaldas with a flying knee. So entertaining. Main card kicks off, and 5 straight. For having 4 of 4 decisions on the main card, I was entertained the whole time. Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler put on one of the greatest fights in UFC history. Top 10, I bet, for round 3 fights at least. Shane Burgos and Billy Quarantillo do the exact same. An absolute banger of a fight. Marlon Vera then knocks Frankie Edgar out with a front kick, face planting him in round number 3 in the third fight of the evening. Rose Namajunas and Zhang Weili will engage in such a competitive fight, a split decision going to Rose Namajunas, and the main event, Usman and Covington, damn near topped their first fight in what was just such an exciting event. 267 and 268, love those two pay-per-views. Heading on into November, Max Holloway, Yair Rodriguez, another good main event, honestly. Yair putting up a fight, managed to win 2 rounds on 2 judges' scorecards. Other than that, nothing too entertaining. Sang Yadong got a nice TKO over Julio Arce. Joel Alvarez finished Thiago Moises in round 1. Yeah, that's all I really got. November 20th, oh my gosh, Ketlen Vera, Miesha Tate. Don't even want to talk about the snooze fest that was. Oh my goodness. Sean Brady did beat Michael Chiesa in the co-main event, which was interesting to see. I thought Michael Chiesa would have won that, actually. Wow, there was one finish on that card, and it was Talia Santos submitting Joanne Wood in round number 1. Actually got a title shot off that win, actually. Heading into our December, we had 3 more events for the year. We kicked off with Rob Font, Jose Aldo winning all 5 rounds in the main event. Rafael Fiziev would beat Brad Riddell in the co-main event with a spinning wheel kick in round number 3. Jamal Hill would knock Jimmy Crute out cold in 48 seconds. Clay Guida would get a submission. Chris Curtis would TKO Brendan Allen. It's so crazy where their careers have gone since then. Manel Cape would get his second UFC finish on the prelims against Zalaga Zumalagov. UFC 269 was next, and I watched this with my girlfriend, and I was going absolutely nuts. So whenever some certain fights come on, I just get glued to the TV. This was one of them. On the prelims, I mean, Aaron Blanchfield got a win. Andre Muniz got another armbar win. Taito Ivasa finished Augusto Sakai, which is pretty cool. Dominic Cruz had a close fight against Pedro Munoz. Josh Emmett defeated Dan Ige in a close fight. Main card kicks off. Sean O'Malley finishes Riley Paiva in round number 1. So awesome. Kai Kara-France then brutalized Cody Garbrandt. Jeff Neal and Santiago Ponzinibbio put on a sleeper. Then Julia Pena pulled off one of the biggest, if not the biggest upset in UFC history when she submitted Amanda Nunes to win the Women's Bantamweight Championship in round number 2. The shock factor from that. The shock factor from that was insane. And you want to know the craziest thing? Israel Adesanya's dad on Verdict MMA predicted it. What are the odds of that? Main event, Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier. I watched Charles lose round 1. I was getting nervous. It was still close, though. Comes back in round number 2, uses his grappling to just brutalize Dustin Poirier, and just walks straight out for round 3, takes his back, submits him, and I was so happy. Everyone doubted Oliveira here, and the fact it was over Dustin Poirier made it so much sweeter. Final event of 2021. I was actually in Florida to watch this. It wasn't even like the end of the night. We were just I was watching with all my cousins and stuff upstairs in our little room, and Derek Lewis knocked out Chris Dawkins in round number 1. Just sent him out cold. That was the best moment of the night. Bilal Muhammad beat Wonderboy Thompson in a depressing fight where he just grappled him. Ricky Simone actually retired Rafael Sunsai with a brutal KO. Matus Gamrot submitted, or actually TKO'd Diego Ferreira with knees to the body. You rarely see that. And Justin Tafa KO'd Harry Hunsucker. That was a fun moment. 2021 had its moments, but a lot of doozies looking back on. 2021 was definitely not the best year, actually. I feel like 2020 was more entertaining, if you ask me. But a lot of good title fights, some bad ones, some good ones. Favorite moment of the year, probably whenever Charles Oliveira was on screen, which was twice on, and just never disappointed. Absolutely love it. UFC in 2021, looking back on it, I think I'm actually going to leave you in the past. Unfortunately, that's where you'll stay. But no more about the past. Let's look to the future, as this weekend we have a new UFC event. That's right, UFC Vegas 85, headlined by Roman Dolidze and Nasruddin Imavov, goes down this Saturday night. Roman's ranked number 8 at middleweight, and Nasruddin's ranked number 11. The winner will probably stay at the number 8 position, or in Nasruddin's case, he could rise up the rankings. We have, at the moment, before the weigh-ins, 13 fights on the card, so let's not waste any more time. Let's get right into previewing every fight on UFC Vegas 85. Kicking off the card, we have a heavyweight matchup between Thomas the Train Peterson and Jamal Pogues. Thomas 8-1 professional record, Jamal 10-4, 6'3" to 6'1" in favor of Jamal Pogues. Jamal also has a 3-inch reach advantage, 77 to 74. Thomas Peterson fights in the southpaw stance. Jamal fights orthodox. Both men are 28 years old. Thomas Pearson is a wrestler. He's actually from Farmington, Minnesota, trains in Minnesota, which I absolutely love. Minnesota boy myself. Of his 8 victories, 7 by knockout, 1 by submission. That 1 by submission was actually on Dana White's Contender Series when he finished Chandler Cole in round number 2 back in August. Currently on a 3-fight win streak. His only loss is actually to UFC fighter Waldo Cortez Acosta, which I find is a fun fact. Thomas Pearson, in his one appearance on Dana White's Contender Series, uses grappling to finally set up a submission. But, I mean, besides that, 7 knockouts, 100% finish rate. I absolutely love to see it. Jamal Pogues from California actually trains at Syndicate MMA, same gym as notable UFC light heavyweight Khalil Roundtree Jr. Of his 10 victories, 4 by knockout, 1 by sub. He won on Season 3 of Dana White's Contender Series back in 2019, but was not given a contract. He would come back in Season 6 in 2022 and get another unanimous decision win, and would indeed get a contract. He would make his debut against Josh Pargians on February 18th of last year, getting a win, but would drop a loss to Mick Parkin, who we mentioned earlier, who's fighting Muhammad Usman. March 23rd, but Mick Parkin beat Jamal Pogues to give him his 4th professional loss. Back in July, both men are back, but when I look at this fight, I mean, first off, bias. Give me Thomas Peterson because he's a Minnesota boy. I mean, come on. I cannot pick against any boy from Minnesota. John Costanda, he's from Minnesota. I always ride with him. But what am I going to predict will happen? I'm going to say we get a round 2 TKO from Thomas Peterson. I think he uses his grappling, gets a little ground and pound action going, and we get our first finish of the night with Thomas the Train Peterson. I can't bet against him. I can't bet against any of my Minnesota boys, and I only know of 2. Actually, Brock Lesnar. I always root for Brock Lesnar, even though he's not in the UFC. Next up on the prelims, Landon the Lone Wolf Quiones takes on Marquel Medeiros in the UFC lightweight division, 155. Landon Quiones is 7-2-1. Marquel is 8-1. 5'10" to 5'9" gives Marquel a 1-inch height advantage, and Landon Quiones has a 1-inch reach advantage, 70 to 69. Southpaw stands for Landon, orthodox for Marquel Medeiros. Let's start off with Marquel Medeiros, 27 years old. He's, where's he from? Colorado, actually. I don't know why I thought he was from, like, Brazil or something. Trains at Factory X Muay Thai, same gym as Anthony Smith, Dustin Jacoby, Brandon Rival, notable UFC fighters, or the ranked ones. Of his 8 victories, 6 are by knockout, and he's actually on a 6-fight win streak. Got a huge round 1 knockout on the final episode of Dana White's Contender Series last season, back in October, and yeah, since then, waiting to get a fight booked. Finally gets one booked against Landon Quiones, who was on the Ultimate Fighter of this past Ultimate Fighter season, did lose. The 28-year-old is from Florida, and of his 7 victories, 5 by knockout, 1 by sub. He did step in to fight Nasrat Hakpasarat in Australia back in September at UFC 293. He came up short in that, but did land 148 significant strikes. Look, Landon, I'm sure you're super good. You did impress me on Dana White's Contenders, not the Contenders, but on the Ultimate Fighter. But give me Marquel Medeiros. You know, I just got a good feeling about him. I will say that for this fight like this, I am leaning by unanimous decision. So we are going to say a decision anyway, just because I don't want to get carried away with all of my finishes, you know, submissions, TKOs, and stuff like that. So we'll say a decision win for Marquel Medeiros, simply because he's coming off a knockout and he's an inch tall. I don't really know what these prelim fights. Keeping us a rolling, we move on to the women's flyweight division as Luiana Dread Carolina takes on Julija Stolyarenko. Luiana is 9-4 professionally. Julija 11-8-2. 1-inch height advantage for Julija, 5'7" to 5'6". But Luiana holds a 3-inch reach advantage, 69 to 66. Julija Storyalenko, 30 years old, is from Lithuania. She actually holds 10 submission wins to her name of her 11 victories. There actually are some fun facts about her. She is one of 3 females in UFC history to compete in 3 weight classes, those being bantamweight, strawweight, and flyweight, unless she fought at... Actually, she might have fought at featherweight. I think that was the other weight class. Jessica Andrade and Valerie Letorno also accomplished that feat. Storyalenko's 42-second win at UFC 276 marked the second fastest submission in UFC women's bantamweight history behind Ronda Rousey's 14-second stoppage over Kat Zingano at UFC 184 in February of 2015. Julija, been in the UFC since 2018. I mean, it hasn't been pretty. She's 2-5, but I mean, her 2 wins were armbars, and she's coming off an armbar over Molly McCann in what was a huge upset. For that, she had been TKO'd by Chelsea Chandler, which is not a good sign because Chelsea Chandler is not good. Her 2 submission wins are very impressive, though, so I'll give Julija that. Luiana Carolina, 30 years old, from Sao Paulo, Brazil. Of her 9 victories, 1 by submission, 2 by knockout. Now, she is 4-3 in the UFC, won on Season 1 of Dana White's Contender Series, the Brazil edition. Debuted and beat Priscilla Cachoeira, then got knee-barred by Ariane Lipski. Would win 2 decision wins over Poliana Botello and Lupi Godinez, a good win over Lupi in 2021. But then we get spinning back-elbowed by Molly McCann in London in 2022. Lose a close split decision to Joanne Wood. And since July of this past year, she did beat Ivana Petrovic, which I did not see coming. So as much as I love Julija, I just don't think she is good striking. So I think if Luiana can keep this on the feet, and she'll become victorious. So we're going to give Luiana Carolina... Should we give her a TKO win here? I'm going to give Luiana Carolina. I'm feeling generous. She hasn't gotten a finish in the... Well, she hasn't gotten a finish in the UFC, so pretty ballsy with this one. But we're going to say a round 1 knockout. Just to be special. Just to be spontaneous, if you will. But there's really no stipulations for this fight. Actually, either women, if they lose, they could go home. So maybe that's the stipulation. Keeping us a-rolling, we move to a featherweight bout between Ji Young, Korean Tiger Lee, and Blake L. Animal Builder. I love the nicknames, gentlemen. I love it. Ji Young Lee is 10-1. Blake Builder 8-1-1. 5'10" to 5'8" gives Ji-Young Lee the height advantage. 73 to 68, a 5-inch reach gives Ji-Young Lee also the reach advantage. Orthodox stance for Ji-Young, switch stance for Blake Builder. Blake Builder, El Animal, if you will, 33 years old. He's from California. Of his 8 victories, 1 by knockout, 4 by submission. Came in on Season 6 of Dana White's Contender Series, getting a round 1 submission of Alexander Morgan. Would debut in February of last year, beating Shane Young in round, by decision. Wow, didn't get a finish, huh? His last fight out, UFC 289 in June, he would lose a unanimous decision to Kyle Nelson. Well, it was kind of a snoozer, but I actually did see a clip of Blake Builder fighting someone on internet who was calling him out, and he literally hit him with a couple shots and knocked him out cold. It was pretty entertaining, I won't lie. Unfortunately for Blake, he's not fighting a random Twitter bot. No, he's fighting the Korean Tiger, Ji-Young Lee. The 28-year-old is from South Korea. 4 KOs and 3 subs make up his 10 victories, and he's currently on a 7-fight win streak. Fun fact, he actually won the road to the UFC back in the 2022 edition of it, Season 1, submitting Zai Bin in round number 1 and then knocking out Liu Kai in 42 seconds. Wow, 2 sub-45-second finishes. Wow. His UFC debut against Yizha on February in 2023 was not too easy. Did win that by split decision, but he's back. He's here to take over, and you bet your butt I'm going with Ji-Young Lee. Come like the Korean Tiger. I freaking love that nickname, brother. As for Blake, losing to Kyle Nelson's kind of brutal. However, I do think Blake Builder is talented. I don't really see him losing. Blake's not really known for anything in particular, and neither is Ji-Young Lee. So I'll say another decision win. A decision win for Ji-Young Lee, but it could be entertaining. I hope it's entertaining. I stand corrected. I really hope that it's entertaining. I want all the fights to be good. Keeping our prelims a rolling, we move to the welterweight division where Themba the Answer Go Rimbo takes on Pete Dead Game Rodriguez. Some of these nicknames are not cool. Korean Tiger, LMNL, those are cool. The Answer, Dead Game. Dead Game's bad. The Answer isn't bad. Dead Game is bad. Themba is 11-4 professionally. Pete Rodriguez 5-1. Wow, only 6 fights for dead game. 6-1 to 5-9. Oh, by the way, for that Jiang pick, the reach is one of the main factors, so I'm choosing him over Blake Builder. Themba Gorimbo boosts a 6-inch reach advantage, 77-71, and a 4-inch height advantage, 6'1" to 5'9". So Themba does have some size on Pete Rodriguez. We'll actually start with Themba Gorimbo, who is most notable for The Rock giving him a house in Las Vegas, which is pretty interesting, pretty kind of The Rock to do. Themba has all his goals written on a piece of paper. He was like sleeping in the gym he was at. The Rock can be a stand-up guy at times. Themba is 33 years old from South Africa. 1 KO and 6 subs make up his 11 victories. And he actually trains at MMA Masters, same gym as Colby Covington and Ia Topura. Themba did lose his UFC debut in February to A.J. Fletcher a year ago. That was getting submitted in round number 2. But he bounced back in May with a unanimous decision, dominating win over Takashi Sato. So Themba is coming off a win, which is very nice to see. His opponent, Pete Rodriguez, the 27-year-old, is from Arizona and actually trains at the MMA Lab, same gym as Benson Henderson and Alex Caceres. 5 KOs give him a 100% finish rate, and those are all of his wins. His only loss is a round 1 knockout loss to Jack Della Maddalena, which isn't too bad. Now, I will say his one UFC win back in October of 2022 over Mike Jackson wasn't the most impressive, judging that Mike Jackson sucks. So for that reason, Themba Gorimbo, he can strike, he can, he can grapple. I'm going to give this one to Themba Gorimbo. I mean, the height and reach really help. And I also feel like someone like him, the UFC would kind of want to push. They might be a bit more lenient towards him. So I'm going to say Themba Gorimbo by round 3 submission. I think he toys with Pete a bit. I think he toys around with Pete a bit, but who knows? We'll see. Moving into the flyweight division, we have a matchup between the undefeated Azat Kazak Maksum. His name's Azat Maksum, the Kazakh. I don't know if that comes before or after, during his name. His nickname's Kazakh. And Charles Energy Johnson. How fun, Charles. What a fun nickname. Azat is 17-0. Charles Johnson is 13-6. 2 inches in height for Charles, 5'9" to 5'7", and same reach. Southpaw stands for Azat, switch stands for Charles. That reach is 70, by the way. 70 inches for the boys. Charles Johnson, Energy, been in the UFC since 2022. 33-year-old is from St. Louis, Missouri. 5 KOs and 4 subs give him 9 of 13 finishes for his 13 wins. His 3-fight losing skid is the longest of his career. He hasn't earned a victory since January of 2023, went 1-3 of his 4 fights in 2023. He does land at a 57.2% of his significant strike attempts against his fellow UFC flyweight competition, which is actually the second best rate in divisional history behind CJ Vergara. Very interesting. Charles came on to the UFC in July of 2022, losing to Muhammad Mokaev, who took him down 12 times. He had followed that up with a split decision win over Zalagas Lumulagov and then a round 1 TKO of Jimmy Flick. But after that, took on Ode Osborne, lost by split decision, took on Cody Durden, got taken down 11 times to a unanimous decision loss. And last time out in November, lost to Rafael Estevam. So, Charles, it's been a rough going for you. 3-fight skid, but there's certain fights like these where this is usually where the down fighter wins. But we'll see as he takes on Azat Maksum, who is 17-0. As I said, the 28-year-old is from Kazakhstan. 5 KOs and 6 subs give him 11 of his 17 wins by submission. He was actually supposed to fight Nate Maness on this card, but Nate Maness pulled out with an injury, so in steps Charles Johnson. Azak's first fight in the UFC was in, when was this? July of last year? Yeah, July 15th. Beat Tyson Nam by split decision. And this was a very interesting fight, as when you kind of look at it, Maksum got outstruck 81-46, went 2 of 11 on takedowns, and at the end of the day, Tyson probably should have won due to his striking, but I'm sure the record helped. I'm sure no one really caring about this fight at the time helped. But here's the thing. Here's the thing about this. As I look at Azat Maksum, gosh, if I can pronounce his name for the life of me, and I look how he performed against Tyson Nam. Then I look at Charles Johnson. 3-fight losing streak is clearly meant to lose. But the thing is, Charles Johnson's weakness is his grappling. And of his 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, of his 6 UFC fights he's had, oh my gosh, he's actually been taken down 32 times. So, actually, due to that, I am going to give Azat Maksum the victory. We're going to say, we'll say decision. We're going to say another decision. I don't know if I'm too confident that he'll get a finish, but I was leaning Charles Johnson potentially, but after just seeing how many times he's been taken down, I mean, you might not be UFC material. I'm sorry to tell you. I'm sorry. I hate to be that guy. I really do, but you might not be cut out for this old UFC thing. Didn't I have, actually, I'm a little confused. I thought I had fun facts for Molly McCann, but I don't think I do. Molly McCann fights Diana Belbita in our next prelim fight. Is it our final prelim fight? Actually, let me check what the official main card is on Verdict MMA. We do have a 6-fight main card, so your feature prelim is Molly McCann and Diana Belbita. You know, I thought I had some fun facts, but I guess I don't. Do we really need fun facts for Molly McCann? I don't really think so. I don't really think so. We didn't. We didn't even. We were supposed to have fun facts. It doesn't even matter if I have fun facts for. Let's talk about this woman's strawweight bout. Molly Meatball McCann, 13-6 record. Diana Belbita, Diana the Warrior Princess Belbita, that is, 15-8 record. 3 inches a night for Diana, 5'7", 5'4", 6 inches in reach, 68-62 in favor of Belbita, 2. Both women fighting orthodox stance. Molly McCann, of course, buddies with Patty Pimblett, as we all know. It's been an interesting run for her. The 33-year-old from Liverpool, England, has 6 KOs of her 13 victories. All 3 of her 6 losses are by submission. She's never been knocked out. She is on a 2-fight losing streak. Both she hasn't won since July of 2022. Her last 2 fights, she's been submitted in round number 1. Molly's been around since 2018 and always appears grappling's her weakness. Losses to Jillian Robertson, Talia Santos, Laura Prochinio, Erin Blanchard, Julia, we just talked about. But she does hold 2. She actually had back-to-back spinning elbow performance in the night knockouts over Louis-Anne Caroline and Hannah Goldie, which are interesting. And fun fact, this is actually a rematch between Molly and Diana Belbita. We'll talk about that after we mention Diana Belbita, who is a kickboxer, 27 years old, from Romania, now trains in Canada. 6 KOs and 4 submissions make up her 15 victories. She has 4 losses by submission and has also never been TKO'd. She's actually been fighting since she was 17 years old. Can you believe that? Were you fighting when you were 17 years old? That is utterly insane. Incredible. She's been at this 10 years. Diana debuted against Molly McCann, losing that fight. Since then, got armbarred by Liana Jojua, defeated Hannah Goldie by unanimous decision, lost to Gloria De Paula, beat Maria Oliveira, last fought October of 2023, lost the unanimous decision to Karolina Kowalski. But let's look at their fight from 5 years ago. Wow. Back in 2014, Molly McCann destroyed her 30-25 across the board. Molly McCann had 2... Wait, what? Molly McCann had 2 10-8 rounds? I don't even know what rounds. Maybe rounds 2 and 3? Round 2 was pretty dominant, 50 total strikes to 23. Round 3 was pretty close. I have no idea how that first fight went. I guess by the looks of it, Molly McCann absolutely destroyed. But I don't know if I can pick Molly McCann, bro. She's done so bad. She got taken down on 1 attempt, her last 2 fights, and lost. The only good thing for her is Diana Belbita is a striker. She does have a reach. Should we back Molly McCann? You know, this is on the prelims. We have nothing to lose from this. But Diana Belbita has gone win-loss. She is scheduled to get a win. Ooh, this is a tough one. I love that I'm thinking about this more than I should, being that it literally holds no value. It holds no value because I could care less. If she wins or loses, I'm putting no money on her. We will give this fight to, we're going to say Molly McCann. Well, we'll go Molly McCann. We'll pick Molly McCann one last time. Why not? Why not give her one last shot? Or we're giving a decision. Another decision here. I don't really know if she's going to win. It's kind of like actually, you know what? She's 50-50. It beats me. We'll move on from this. We spent way too much time talking about this. But let's get into the main card where all of our predictions are official. We've got 6-fight main cards. We've got to be spot on with what we predict. Kicking us off, we got a welterweight bout between Gilbert, the RGV bad boy, Urbina, and Charles Chuck Buffalo Radke, Boys, what are these nicknames? Oh my gosh. Gilbert Urbina, 7-3 record. Charles Radke, 8-3. 6'3" to 5'9" gives Gilbert Urbina a gigantic height advantage, despite only having a 3-inch reach advantage, 75-72. Both fighters fight orthodox. Let's start with Gilbert Urbina. 1-1 in the UFC, fought once in 2021. Actually stepped in on short notice to fight Trayshawn Gore, or took Trayshawn Gore's place against Brian Battle in the season 28. Actually, no, it was season 29 of The Ultimate Fighter. He lost to Brian Battle, got submitted in round number 2, but came back in May of last year, defeated Ori and Koch with a round 2 kick knockout. I mean, good for Gilbert Urbina. He's getting back at it. The 27-year-old is from Texas, 2 KOs, 2 subs of his 7 victories. He actually holds a loss to Sean Brady on the regional scene, which I probably find pretty funny. So, Gilbert, big height advantage, could play an impact against Charles Chuck Buffalo Radke. Charles is 33 years old from Wisconsin. 3 KOs and 2 subs of his 8 victories. He's on a 5-fight win streak. He did beat Blood Diamond in his UFC debut back in September in Australia. And I will say, judging by how good Blood Diamond's abilities are, and judging by, not being able to finish him, actually getting outstruck, Gilbert Urbina being significantly much better. I'm going to go with Gilbert Urbina, round 1 knockout. That's right. We're getting ambitious to open the main card. Give me Gilbert Urbina. He's 2 KOs, 2 subs. I think Charles Radke's going to crack under the pressure. Maybe. We'll see. Bout order to change, but as of right now, we have a middleweight bout as the second fight of our main card between Alishkabab, the Black Wolf Karizov, and Mahmoud Muradov. This one is going to be a certified banger. Alishkabab, 14-0, perfect undefeated. Mahmoud Muradov, 26-8. Wow, 34 professional fights. 6'2" to 5'9" gives Mahmoud a 5-inch height advantage, a 1-inch reach advantage for Mahmoud too, 75-74. Orthodox stance for Mahmoud, southpaw for Alishkabab. Ooh, we can get some kicks set up. Alishkabab is 33 years old from Makachav, Russia. 5 KOs and 4 submissions make up his 14 victories. Of course, he is undefeated. He returns to the competition for the first time since March of 2022, and he's actually fought just twice overall since March of 2018. That's ridiculous. Wow. Those 2 fights since 2018 have been a Season 4 Dana White's Contender Series round 1 submission over Henrique Singumato. That was in 2020. And then in March of 2022, he submitted Dennis Talulin in round number 2. Gosh, Alishkabab's been out of it for a while now that I look at this. Ugh. But his opponent, Mahmoud Muradov, I mean, he's been getting after it. Mahmoud Muradov, 33 years old, was born in Tajikistan, but now lives and trains in the Czech Republic. 17 KOs and 3 subs. 20 of his 26 fights he has finished. Wow, Mahmoud. Wow. Mahmoud Muradov lands at a 66.7% of his takedown attempts in UFC middleweight history, the highest rate in divisional history. Has Alishkabab ever been taken down? No, but he's also fought 2 bums. Mahmoud Muradov, been in the UFC since 2019. Actually started his UFC runoff on a 3-fight win streak. Wins over Licio De Churchio, finishes of Trevor Smith and Andrew Sanchez, both round 3 knockouts. Before losing to Gerald Meerschaert in 2021 by rear naked chokehold. Would then drop one to Kyle Barallo before absolutely dominating Brian Barberino. Wow, that's pretty fascinating if you ask me. But you know what? I'm feeling good about Alishkabab Karizov. Give me. I have a thing for when fighters are undefeated. I always seem to pick them. Give me Alishkabab Karizov. I ran into this issue with Vitor Petrino where I thought people would beat him, and they never did. But give me Alishkabab Karizov with a round 2 submission. I think he gets the takedown, brings it to the mat, and proves he is still legit. But if Mahmoud dominates him, that does not surprise me whatsoever at all. That would not be surprising at all. Next up, I think we finally have some ranked fighters on the card. Yeah, we do. Next up, women's flyweight bout between Vivi Araujo and Natalie Silva. Natalie Silva is currently ranked number 9 at women's flyweight. Vivian Araujo is ranked number 7. Ooh, very interesting. I'm actually a fan of Natalie Silva, if she's the one I've been thinking of. Vivian Araujo, 12-5. Natalie